Welcome to an updated real-time strategy top 10 video, except this time it is a top 20 video. I recently uploaded a top 10 missing units in Total War Warhammer 2, but when researching the information for the video I missed the fact that 2 of my listed units in that video were actually in the game as a possible mount for the Lords. This, coupled with the fact that now I've put over 30 hours into the game since that video, I feel I'm in a better position to expand my list and update my thoughts on what units are missing from the game and how they could be implemented into Total War Warhammer 2. There are new units included in this list, along with a reshuffle and placement of some of the units. Before we start, this is my list, my opinion. Yours will differ, of course. This list includes end times units, and the rankings the units are in are my personal preference. They are not based on stats, race or potential. Creative Assembly stated that end times units won't be in the game, but that doesn't stop them from being missing on the tabletop. Most of these follow my personal preference and the rule of cool, so I hope you enjoy. Number 20. Jungle Swarms, Lizardmen. A jungle swarm is a term used to describe all the various and highly dangerous creatures that have made the lush jungles of Lustria their home. The ruins, deserts and primordial jungles of Lustria crawl with all manner of these very same life forms, most of which have never been seen outside of their home continent. Although small in size when compared to the apex predators, the thundering reptilian titans that crash through the underbrush in many ways are no less deadly. To catch prey and defend themselves in this perilous environment, many of these creatures are highly venomous. Every step an invader takes is potentially his last. While hacking a path through the dense foliage, it is all too easy to step within range of a coiled serpent, to tread upon a camouflaged iguana, or to walk unawares beneath a hanging viper vine. Scuttling hunterpedes, spine-encrusted hyenodons, or the blue-ringed asp have venom that can kill a man-sized victim before he can stagger more than a few steps. In other, more hospitable lands, finding such minuscule menaces in his boot or crawling upon his bedroll is a mere inconvenience for a traveller. In Lustria, however, it is likely the last thing he will see, and the creature's bite or sting sends him into a twitching paralysis of heart-bursting fits of agony. A jungle swarm would act as a meat shield unit for the lizardmen. It would be like a fast-moving zombie unit for the lizardmen, except low damage with poison attacks. I think this would be a very fun, cheap and colourful unit to field for the lizardmen. Skinks make a good tar pit when needed, but a specialised unit specifically for slogging down a unit until the slower Saurus warriors can reach the enemy lines would be a great addition to the roster. Number 19. Giant Rats, or Wolf Rats, for the Skaven. The giant rat is a staple product of Clan Moulder's bioengineering, who long ago unlocked the secrets of growing, mutating and surgically augmenting typical rats into the ferocious predators they are well known for today. At a distance these creatures might be mistaken for large dogs, but on closer inspection their foul and unnatural disposition is all too clear. Like their smaller cousins, giant rats have hilarious and hairless tails and feet, but unlike their natural brethren, giant rats exhibit rampant signs of severe mutation and the diabolical grafting so frequent in Clan Moulder made beasts. Giant rats, or their bigger cousins, the wolf rats, would be a great fit in the current Skaven army roster. The Skaven currently lack cavalry, or fast-moving skirmish units akin to direwolves or chaos warhounds. Yes, they have the doom wheel, and faster than average infantry, but none of these quite fit the purpose of skirting behind enemy lines and picking at the rear flank of enemies' missile units. Currently, as already mentioned, the only options a Skaven general has for getting the juicy innards of a high elf archer line is either summoning up clan reps from below or investing in the late game doom wheel. Early on, Skaven have a minor problem with the counter to these archers unless you are extra sneaky or have managed to get some gutter runners behind enemy lines. These fast moving, weak, cheap and annoying units would help this gap in the roster. They could be a tier 1 building that eventually leads into rat ogres and the hell pit abomination. Every army has its weakness, and Skaven's lack of cavalry is one of theirs, which in turn gives them more of a challenge, which is welcome, so I understand why these units were not included, but it would be nice to see them on the battlefield. Number 18. Salamanders for the Lizardmen. Salamanders are giant predatory reptiles that stalk the swamplands and estuaries of the Lustrian jungles. Propelled by 4 thickly muscled legs and a powerful tail, they are swift-moving creatures whether on land or in water. Salamanders are voracious hunters, and their favoured method of catching prey is to swiftly close the distance, moving through underbrush or even submerged underwater. Once within range, they launch a burst of highly corrosive liquid from their gullets, a substance so volatile that it bursts into flames upon contact with the air. Salamanders could be a good special unit in the same way the warp fire thrower is for the Skaven, a strong, powerful, short-ranged unit. It would also be good in close combat. The Lizardmen do have some bulky special units already, such as the Croxagors, Stegodons and Basiladon, which is why this is lower on my list, but it could be a nice addition to the Lizardmen roster having some fire-breathing units on the field, since many large units in the game, first game especially, are vulnerable to fire. Number 17. The Razordon, for the Lizardmen. Razordons are a species of thorny, predatory reptiles whose whole body is covered with an array of large, barbed spines, hardened spikes made of bone that project menacingly out of their bodies. As a defensive protection, this razor-sharp body armour serves to deter all but the most determined of creatures, and even the most monstrous of Lustrias that many apex predators will think twice before attacking a Razordon. The Razordon's spines are not only a deterrent, however, they are also a deadly offensive weapon. By way of powerful muscle spasms, Razordons can discharge their spines, shooting them outwards in a deadly hail. So I placed the Razordon right next to the Salamander because they could come from the same building tier. Currently the Lizardmen Cavalry are all available at the same tier, Tier 3. Perhaps the Salamander and the Razordon could be Tier 2, alongside Cold One Riders with spears and swords. Then Tier 3 can be the Horned ones. The Razordon would act like a very short-range artillery piece, like a repeater bolt thrower, except it has the ability to remain undetected until very close, like the Chameleon Skinks. It has the possibility to be a very interesting, hard-to-use heavy hitter. Number 16. The Lothern Skycutter, for the High Elves. The Lothern Skycutters are sleek airborne chariots that rest upon a cushion of magic and are drawn into battle by the swift feather rocks that nest along the glittering coast. When the swift hawk ships of Lothern sleep from their moorings, they are accompanied to this open sea by these same Skycutters. These serve as the eyes and ears of the Lothern's fleets, allowing them to plan engagements long before the enemy is even aware of their presence. Skycutter also serves as the outriders of the Lothern's armies, for they can go where the grounded king cannot. Should a Skycutter's crew encounter a foe, their goal is to clear the skies, ensuring that Lothern will dominate the heavens in the battle to come. The bows of the Sea Guard crew can harry lesser troops, but larger foes ignore their arrows. Thus do the crew favour the compact Igor bolt throwers, whose steel shots can deal a ruinous blow to even the mightiest of beasts. These prized weapons are mounted upon the Skycutter's prow, allowing the Sea Guard crew to maintain a constant barrage of fire even as if they dive into the fray. This is a different one, and one I am adding to my list just because I'm interested in what potential an airborne chariot unit, which could be upgraded to be a mobile airborne artillery piece, has in Total War Warhammer. The High Elves do have a chariot unit already, but this will bolster their air superiority even more. It will be a late game unit that can be upgraded from the already available Lothern Sea Guard are recruited from. Number 15. Doomfire Warlocks, for the Dark Elves. When Malekith first learned of the Prophecy of Demise, his initial wrathful blow fell against the Doomfire Warlocks of Haggrief. Fearing that they would rebel, the Witch King cursed them with hollowness, and their souls have teetered between the mortal world and the realm of chaos ever since. Thus, whilst other elves fear Slaanesh as a potential fate, Doomfire Warlocks feel the Dark Prince's grasp on their souls grow with every passing day. As the grip tightens, dark runes blaze into their life on their flesh, and unholy fire creeps slowly across the skin. If this process is not arrested before the Warlock's entire body is swathed in flame, his soul is snuffed out and consumed by the Dark Prince. This fate cannot be thwarted, for no mortal can deny the rapacious Slaanesh. It can, however, be stalled if the Warlock sacrifice others in his stead. The purer or mightier the soul, the better. Doomfire Warlocks descend upon villages in the dead of night, seeking victims to take Slaanesh's thirst. Cloaked in shadow, they pass like phantoms through defences, stealing prey from their beds before vanishing into the night. When a Dark Elf army musters, the Warlocks gather, hoping to capture mighty warriors to fuel their rites. To aid this cause, they infuse their scimitars with numbing curses that strip a foe of his sense with a single scratch. Alive but mindless, the victims are led from the battlefield to the rituals that will keep Slaanesh at bay for a few more days. This unit has a potential for being a glass cannon at the start, but a heavy damage dealer later game. Very weak at the start of the battle, but as they fight, and the more kills they get as a unit, they will get stronger and stronger, as if they are fueling their strength with the souls of enemies. They would also be a vanguard unit. Number 14. Ark of Sotek for the Lizardmen. The Ark of Sotek, or Twin-Headed Ark, is a device that was first used in the Skaven Wars by the Order of Tehenuin himself. It is a sacred stone artifact lifted upon the Basilodon's armoured back. In appearance, it is a stone basin engraved with symbols venerating Sotek. As the Basilodon pounds towards its enemies, the skink crew activate these glyphs and, perhaps most importantly, rake the coals beneath. From out the Ark's sacred confines pour forth an endless supply of serpents, blessed by Sotek, or at least enraged by the heat, and eager to attack the nearest foe. While some beasts would understandably balk at the multitude of snakes, it is the red-hot coals that cause creatures to refuse to carry this sacred device. Such is the thickness of the Basilodon's armour, however, that it does not even notice the blazing fires stoked on its very back. Like many Lizardmen devices, the apparatus at first seems to be quite simple, but the magic is twofold. Firstly, by Sotek's blessings, the enraged serpents swarm out and strike at those nearby, yet miraculously the snakes only ever attack the enemies of the Lizardmen. The second inexplicable thing, although few foes ever live long enough to realise it, is the Ark never runs out of snakes. Whether they are summoned from the surrounding flora or created by eldritch means is irrelevant. The serpents continue to issue forth, like water from a well. So many vipers, asps and snakes of all kinds writhe near the Ark, that those swarms of diminutive reptiles accompanying the Lizardmen army grow ever larger in its presence. This unit would be a perfect buffer unit for the jungle swarms, and would add a bit more diversity to their possibilities. A large tough Basilodon, with the ability to summon buffed jungle swarms around itself. It could be an incredible tar pit unit. It would give bonuses to any jungle swarm units already on the board, also, as long as they are in its command range. Number 13. Sisters of Avelorn for the High Elves. The Sisters of Avelorn are the personal guardians and handmaidens of the Kingdom of Avelorn and the Everqueen herself. There are regions of Avelorn that the city levies are forbidden to enter. Some are sacred places of power, intrinsically linked with the rites of renewal by which the Everqueen helps sustain Ulthuan and its people. Others are dark and dangerous, places from which the touch of chaos never truly faded. It is a duty of the Sisters of Avelorn to watch over such places, to ensure that the sacred lands remain sacrosanct, and that the beasts who dwell in the tainted reaches stray not, or are swiftly slain if they do. Sisters of Avelorn are keen-eyed archers, elf maids chosen from the ranks of the citizen levy by the Everqueen's personal decree. By tradition, only the most gifted and welcomed into the Sisters of Avelorn, for just as the Everqueen embodies all that is ideal and unblemished in the elven race, so too must her chosen guardians aspire to perfection, not only in mind and body, but also in pursuit of the spiritual. Such serves to raise the warriors of this maiden guard above the petty iniquities that so often pervade the Everqueen's court, ensuring that they remain incorruptible. The Sisters of Avelorn prefer to fight their battles at range, as their weapons do not fire ordinary arrows, but mystical bolts of white-blue flame that set tainted flesh afire. Yet the Sisters shirk not from close quarters battle, for no battle can overcome one who walks the dark paths of Avelorn. Against charging knights, rampaging demons, or an entire coteries of Khainite assassins with cruel murder in their hearts, the warrior maids stand their ground. With precise aim and steady hearts, they loose arrows until the foe is full upon them, then draw their swords and step into the fray. A potentially high-tier small unit of fast-moving archers that can bring even more devastation to the High Elves' range capabilities. Think the High Elf equivalent of Chaos Chosen, except ranged. With the Everqueen playing a big role in the world's lore, especially with the possibility of a Nagash coming into the series at some point, it would be great to see the Everqueen's personal guard in the game. Number 12. Verminlord for the Skaven. A Verminlord is the supreme manifestation of the Skaven's sole demonic deity, the Horned Rat. These demons are by far the strongest and most fearsome of the Under Empire has ever known. The Verminlords are thought to be the demonic forms of ancient lords of decay, warped by the influence of the Horned Rat into his immortal servants. A Verminlord is once majestic and disgusting, a living icon of ruin, the ultimate scavenger. Although such a being towers in height, it is lithe and quick, its movements evoking the fluid yet twitchily scuttling of rats. Their heads are bedecked with the spiraling horns and sloughing flesh of the Horned Rat himself. Warpstone amulets and tomes decorate the Verminlord's leprous form, along with chunks of raw warpstone hammered into their flesh. Verminlords are often seen armed with huge, wicked-looking glaives that are fully twice the height of a man, but their chiseled teeth and sharp claws are easily capable of tearing a creature to pieces. Any onlooker finds that he cannot look away from the nightmarish creature, yet at the same time fervently hopes not to make eye contact. And this is wise. But even the passing attention of such an ancient and wicked being is enough to stop a man's heart. Few dare to meet a Verminlord's all-seeing gaze for even an instant, and none can hold it. When completing the Skaven campaign, I thought of this unit. I thought it would be incredible to be given this incredibly powerful unit to play around with once the Great Vortex has been filled with Skaven corruption and warpstone. That's where it felt like the story was leading to, but it never came to pass. Of course this unit would be incredibly hard to balance, which is why it's lower on my list, despite being an incredibly flexible and diverse model. This one is more wishful thinking, a god tier unit that would only be put into the game to face other potential god tier units, one of which is also on this list. Number 11. Ripperdactyls for the Lizardmen. Ripperdactyl riders are amongst the greatest and most fearsome aerial warriors to ever soar across the skies of tropical Lustria. Though skinks found training pterodons relatively easily, turning Ripperdactyls into sky mounts proved far more difficult. While sustaining many losses, skinks learned that hatched Ripperdactyls could not even be trained. Even stolen eggs were problematic, as upon cracking its shell, the claw-winged creature inside attacked the first thing it saw. If the skink survived, there was a chance the beast might bond to him, although such things took much time and many scars. After about a year, if the Ripperdactyl had not yet eaten the skink, it accepted him as his master. Although Ripperdactyls are merciless killers, eager to devour anything that moves, there is one foe that they target above all others, the Lustrian blot toad. The largest member of the barking toad family is a noxious beast, known to invade the cliffside layers of Ripperdactyls. Even a single such toad produces an odour most unendurable to cold-blooded creatures. When gathered in numbers, they release enough foul gas to drive off a hungry carnosaur. For reasons unknown, the favourite food of blot toads is Ripperdactyl eggs. Naturally, Ripperdactyls seek out such beasts, destroying any they find with extreme prejudice. Skinks have learned that covertly planting a single such blot toad upon an enemy unit, the diminutive rivals can target who is most likely to bear the brunt of the Ripperdactyl's screeching fury. Ripperdactyls would be a nice melee alternative to the pterodon riders. They would swap the ability to release the boulders with pure fighting prowess. They could be accompanied with a blot toad that gives your army a sort of scouting mine instead of the boulders, and if an enemy unit walks over the toad when the Ripperdactyls attack, an attack buff could be triggered. Being the best of the best, these Ripperdactyls would be a next tier unit in their build and recruitment. Number 10. Skaven weapons teams for the Skaven. Coming in at halfway mark of this list is a bunch of models all into one category. Too many to list individual bios for, the Skaven weapons teams are a deadly array of special units ranging from the Rattling Gunners, Doom Flayers, Warp Grinders and Poisoned Wind Mortars. This wide variety of machinery will give the Skaven a lot of variety on the battlefield. The Doom Flayer bringing a cheaper Chariot type unit, Warp Grinder bringing a from the below heavy armor piercing weapon that could be deadly to monsters and anything in armor. The Rattling Gunners bringing short range anti-infantry DPS, and finally the Poison Wind Mortars giving the Skaven some mid-range units with a large splash damage area. The machines of the Clan Sky would be great fun to field, and each would bring something to the battlefield. One unit is notably missing from this, however, and I've given it its own spot later in my list. Number 9. The Charybdis for the Dark Elves. The Charybdis is a loathsome beast of the uncharted depths, its kind seldom seen on land save for when the Dark Elves goad one to the war. Untold numbers of these primeval horrors churn the murky deep off Naggaroth's western coastline, sating their hunger on any creature foolish enough to cross their path. Occasionally, a Charybdis can be sighted upon the broken isles of Naggaroth's western coast, tentacles writhing with a slime and sea spray as the beast hunts for tasty morsels. Once broken, a Charybdis can be counted amongst the most formidable weapons at a beastmaster's command. Its slimy body, adapted to resist the fantastic pressures of the ocean, is unstoppable once on land, possessing colossal strength and incredible fortitude. Smaller foes are plucked from the battlefield and swept into the Charybdis' maw by its crown of flailing tentacles. Larger ones are entangled and held fast, whilst razor-sharp teeth feast upon their succulent flesh. The Charybdis' digestive juices are ferociously efficient, and can dissolve flesh, metal and bone in a matter of minutes. The gemstones, however, are curiously resistant to the attentions of the monster's gullet. Indeed, the belly of a slain Charybdis is something of a treasure trove, full of somewhat magical possessions adorned its victims at the moment of digestion. Such items provide some solace to a beastmaster who is unfortunate enough to lose his Charybdis to battle. If he is lucky, the value of these treasures will be at least partially offset the expense of acquiring a new plaything. This unit would expand the Dark Elves' monster roster and could improve on the already imposing Hydra unit. It could possibly only be built from settlements close to the sea with a port to fit in with its lore. It would swap the War Hydra's range capability with pure bulk and armor. It would be more of a melee specialist and would be very hard to take down. Number 8. Warpluck Jezzails for the Skaven. Warpluck Jezzails are specialised teams of marksmen that bear weaponry of the same name. The weapons that they are named after are long-barreled muskets that require a team of 2 Skaven to fire and reload. This is because the rifle the marksman team uses is extraordinarily long. Aided by its tremendous length, a Warpluck Jezzail is capable of hitting targets at a greater distance than conventional bow or black powder firearms. Once the rifle is fired, the weapon unleashes a single bullet made up of refined toxic warpstone at such a high velocity that it strikes with a force capable of penetrating through even the thickest enemy armour. Although moving too quickly to be seen, the bullets fired by a Warpluck Jezzail leave behind a faint green vapour trail. This generally exposes the weapons team to enemy fire. For this reason, what started out as a mere aiming platform for the long-barreled rifle has turned into a protective shield designed to shield the vulnerable Jezzail team from retaliatory arrows, bolts and bullets. This team will be a great range addition to the Skaven roster, as currently the only ranged non-siege units are slingers which have a skirmish range. Warpluck Jezzails could fill this lack of range with slow firing but very armour piercing damage. They would be in a team of 3 and would be awful in close combat but deadly at long range. It would be very interesting to have a very mobile long range unit, one which would force you to protect your generals or play in a different way, which I feel is always a good addition when a game forces you to adapt to a different situation. Number 7. Sisters of Slaughter for the Dark Elves. The Sisters of Slaughter are first amongst the gladiatorial guilds, the undisputed queens of the arena. Once they numbered merely a dozen, the outcast daughters of a disgraced house who pledged their lives to Eldrazor, the Lord of Blades, so that he might look favourably upon their quest for revenge. Now, with their vengeance long ago carved into the bones of their family's betrayers, the sisters have thousands of experienced fighters spread amongst the enclaves in all the great cities, and a legend that has reached even the shores of distant lands. As for Eldrazor, he is greatly satisfied with the results of his patronage over the half-forgotten outcasts of the Elven Pantheon. his power has grown much with the Sisters' rise. Most Sisters live their entire lives in the arena, performing bloody deeds of battle for baying crowds. There comes a time for many, however, when the ritual of arena combat becomes staid and unfulfilling. Thus, a fortunate dreadlord can find himself approached by a band of Sisters seeking to test their skills on a real battlefield. Few commanders find it possible to reject such an offer, for the Sisters demand no plunder in return for their services, only the promise of a foe that will truly test them. So it is that many a Dark Elf raid is headed by a gaily laughing warrior woman who dance into battle with ferocious grace. Most foes trained for battle of regiments and shield wars are easy prey. The Sisters do not slow their approach as the enemy looms, but vault sure-footedly over the locked shields to throw themselves, weapons swinging, into the formation's heart. Moments later, the surviving foes cast down their weapons and flee, their will to fight broken. The Sisters of Slaughter are no longer concerned with them. Eyes glittering with battle joy, they run towards the next foe, eagerly searching for opponents worthy of their skills. This unit will be a natural upgrade to the Witch Elves. Pure melee, low armor value, much like the War Dancers for the Wood Elves, but massive damage output. Armor-piercing barbed whips could cut through large armoured units. They could gain Unbreakable if they have been in combat with the same unit for a certain amount of time, to show them being satisfied with finally finding a worthy opponent. Number 6. Shadow Warriors for the High Elves. The Shadow Warriors are an elite band of scouts, warriors and assassins, who are the descendants of loyalist elves from the kingdom of Nagarothi during the time of the Great Sundering. The Shadow Warriors are masters of ambush and guerrilla warfare, elite warriors even among other elves. They strike swiftly and noiselessly from concealment with deadly accurate volleys from their longbows, before charging forth to slay any survivors with a flurry of blades. At some point, every race has felt the wrath of the Shadow Warrior, for they go before the armies of Azur wherever they fight, slaughtering their enemies' scouts and clearing a path for the main force. For their part, the warriors of Nagarothi deem their distant kin to be soft and naive. Silently, however, they remain secretly grateful that the burden of the Shadow Warriors has not yet fallen upon their whole race. Whilst the Shadow never directly respond to a cry for aid, many has been swung by an unlooked-for volley of black-fletched arrows, or the silent slaughter of an enemy sorcerer thought invulnerable behind his own lines. Though they are shunned and distrusted by their own folk, the bleak wardens of Nagarothi know full well where their loyalties lie. Summoned from the same tier building as the earlier Sisters of Avelorn, this slow-shooting, armor-piercing and vanguard deployment unit would give the High Elf army roster a bit of sneakery. Used to snipe and hunt enemy lords and high-value units, these Shadow Warriors would be a great asset into any High Elf army. Number 5. The Bloodwrack Medusae, Dark Elves. Bloodwrack Medusae are horrid half-snake creatures that have served the whim and desires of Morathi, the Hag Queen of Nagaroth, for many thousands of years. It is said that the Bloodwrack Medusae were sorceresses of Grond, who used their magics and blood-feasting rituals to become more beautiful than even the gods. In doing so, they came to the attention of the goddess Athari, who is vain beyond measure and suffers no mortal competition. In retribution, the goddess of pleasure stripped the upstart mortals for their beauteous forms and caged them in pain-racked serpentine bodies. Even this punishment she deemed insufficient, so she reduced their minds to be little more than those of beasts. Athari left only one slither of awareness to her victims, even though they might always remember with torment the beauty and power they had once possessed. This unit could be an armoured moving net of Amontok generator. The Bloodwrack Medusae could have the same ability as the net of Amontok, but a short range and passive ability. The Medusae on top of the shrine would be a powerful melee force also. This unit could very easily become a must-have addition to the Dark Elf roster in multiplayer, and could have great potential for battlefield presence. Number 4. White Lion Chariot of Trace, the High Elves. Lion chariots are the mighty mounts of the Thracian White Lions. Not all White Lions are killed out of hand. The High Elves take no joy in needless slaughter, and often stay their blades should cubs be discovered. These infants would doubtless become savage and deadly beasts if they were left in the wild, but with expert care, the young white lions are raised to become as loyal as griffins. These tame white lions swiftly form a bond with the Thracian hunters that foster them and later serve the armies of Ulthuan as war lions. So do many of the Phoenix King's bodyguard ride to battle in lion chariots. Each of these white timbered constructions is drawn by a snare of snarling war lions whose savage power is belied by their feline grace and elegantly plated manes. Whilst a Tyrannok chariot might sweep across the battlefield carefully picking at the foe, a lion chariot of Thrace charges headlong into the fray. As the war lions tear into the foe with fang and claw, the crew fight from the chariot platform, cleaving heads from shoulders with every axe blow. Such daring charges have become the hallmark of the lion chariots, earning them a well-deserved reputation as the bane of even the most determined shield. I've always found that chariots are a massive pain in Total War, especially to fight against if you like having nice neat shield wars, like I do. But as soon as you swamp a chariot down in melee, it is easy to overcome. However, a white lion chariot would not only have a big charge bonus, but it would be deadly in melee. Armor-piercing jaws would crumble even the most elite tier units you encounter. Also, they look beautiful on the battlefield. Number 3. Brood Horror for the Skaven. Brood horrors are the greatest and most bloated of the giant rat species. Created and formed when one of the litter begins to mutate extraordinarily fast and begins to feast and devour the rest of its litter, growing at an alarming rate whilst it increases its strength and savagery. Due to the creature's reputation, they are highly prized by their Moldor masters and are only traded to the greatest of warlord clans, but only they have the wealth to pay for their exorbitant prices. Many pay entire fortunes of warpstone or thousands of slaves in order to get the chance for the creature to be used as powerful mounts of war by many aspiring Skaven warlords. Other times they are simply prodded into battlefield and sent towards their enemies in a killing frenzy, tearing and grinding everything in their path. I've included this Forge World model into the roster because I think it would be great fun to improve your Lord's mount from a Bonebreaker to a Brood Horror. Currently your Lord's mount peaks at level 12 as a Skaven Warlord. It would be a slow mount for sure, but with a heavy impact, much like how the Skink Priest can get an Ancient Stegodon as a mount. A Skaven Warlord could get their own heavy-hitting, bulky melee mount. Number 2. The Dread Saurian, Lizardmen. The Dread Saurian, or Saurian, is the largest and most powerful and feared predator living within the face of the Lustrian continent. An echo of ancient days when huge beasts such as they did battle with the forefathers of dragons for supremacy. Immense creatures larger than a towering carnosaur, and perhaps far more powerful than even the titanic thunder lizard. Dread Saurians, or Saurians, are few in numbers and sacred to the lizardmen, and the fury of each that prowls the fetid jungles is moderated only by the arcane power of the ceremonial armour that bedecks them. Without this precaution, even the power of the Slann could not hold them in check when they are unleashed. When a Dread Saurian, or Saurian, lets out a triumphant cry, its roaring echoes can be heard within the titled plazas of the Lizardmen cities as well as Lustria's deep jungles, a roar that all predatory reptiles both fear and respect. Protected by large armoured plates of gold and jewels inscribed with ancient prophecies, these mighty reptilian beasts often live with mountainous temples dedicated to the Old Ones. From here they are kept in lavishly decorated chambers that are befit for a king, where the skink priests give up offering sacrifices to these mighty demigods. These ceremonial titans carry the most precious relics of ancient days, items of power left behind by the Old Ones. With these artifacts in their possession, the Dread Saurian, or Saurian, are near indestructible when unleashed upon the enemy. When the winds of magic rise and the great storm draws close, the Slann Mage Priest will stir and chant the ancient rituals of binding, shackling the captive Dread Saurians, or Saurians, to their will, the legendary might being coveted by the sorcerers and wizards of younger races. Let loose upon the battlefield, these reptilian monstrosities wreak terrible havoc upon the foe with both their fang-lined jaws and the divine blessings of the Old Ones. My second Forge World model on this list. This one, much like the Verminlord, would be very hard to balance. A giant monster on the battlefield isn't practical either, which is why this one is more of a wishful thinking addition to this list. A rule of cool, if you will. It would obliterate anything it encounters, and would just be loads of fun. Number 1. Stormfiends for the Skaven. The Stormfiend is the ultimate and brutal combination of Clan Moldor bioengineering and Clan Skyre's sadistic techno-magi. Hulking behemoths clad in bulletproof metal armour and equipped with massive Gatling cannons or swirling armoured gauntlets. These monstrosities are amongst the greatest and most unstoppable monsters the Under Empire has to offer. At number 1 is my favourite unit for the Skaven on the tabletop, though controversially. The Stormfiends, these rat ogres on steroids created by a combined effort of Ikit Claw and Throt the Unclean, would be a great continuation and upgrade to the existing rat ogre unit. This progression would be similar to how the Skin Wolves in the Norscan faction can be upgraded to be armoured Skin Wolves. Except, these rat ogres are not only armoured, but they are bigger, bulkier, and have an awfully Skaven array of weaponry attached to them, some even with Gatling guns for hands. They are actually 2 Skaven in one. There is the big bruiser of a rat as the main bulk of the character, but there is this small, weak but intelligent Skaven attached to its back controlling him to make sure that the big ogre does not go into a frenzy and be somewhat pushed in the right direction. These monsters were introduced in the End Times era of Warhammer, when the Skaven were in their prime. Stormfiends would be a small unit of perhaps 3 to 6. They would be very late game and very expensive, but they would pack a punch. Ideal for being a wall of flesh that could also deal out a lot of damage both in melee and range. Currently, I feel the leap in the Skaven building for Clan Moor's awful creations is a bit lacking. The first stage building at tier 3 lets you build rat ogres, but then it's not until tier 5 you can build a Hell Pit Abomination. Why not have it go tier 3 rat ogres, tier 4 Hell Pit, and then tier 5 Stormfiends? Along with the needing the Skaven equivalent of an armory, which currently Stormfiends would give a bit more variety to the standard rat ogres. They would be a very strong late game unit. That would be a lot of fun to have on the battlefield. I hope you enjoyed this list, and please remember to share your thoughts in the comments or leave the like if you enjoyed. Remember, these are my opinions and my rankings. I will see you next time.